All right, let's dive into Kelp. This game throws you right into this underwater chase.
Yeah, like a deep sea thriller.
Exactly. And get this, it's a two-player game, but...
Almost like two different games are happening at the same time.
Right. You've got one player as the octopus, all stealth and survival.
And the other player's the shark, totally driven by hunger, hunting that octopus down.
Yeah, it's wild. Not your typical head-to-head board game, right?
No, not at all. What's so fascinating about Kelp is the asymmetry.
Okay, break that down for me.
So each player has completely different goals. Even the pieces they use and the actions they can take are totally different.
So you're saying the octopus is all about outsmarting the shark, evading them?
While the shark needs to use, well, a little bit of luck, but also some serious deduction to track the octopus down.
So much tension. So let's break down how this plays out, starting with the octopus.
Okay, so the octopus actually has two ways to win. They can outlast the shark.
Meaning?
Well, the shark basically gets exhausted from all the hunting, tires itself out.
Yeah. So the octopus just has to stay hidden, stay alive.
It's more than just hiding. They could also win by eating, gobbling down all 4 food blocks that are on the board.
Okay, so there's some strategy there, more than just hiding. What tools does the octopus have to get around this kelp forest?
The octopus uses cards, and these cards are for moving around and manipulating the blocks that are on the board.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
There are 4 types: move, hide, learn, and eat. Each card lets the octopus do a different set of things.
Give me an example. What kind of sneaky moves can they pull off?
Well, they can do things like swap blocks that are next to each other. So like they could switch their position with a shell.
Tricky.
Right. Or they can even shuffle blocks in a bag, really throw off the shark scent, make it tough for them to guess where they are.
The shark must be losing their mind.
Totally. They're always second-guessing themselves. And then there are those learn cards.
Yeah, what do those do? How do they help the octopus?
Yeah, learn cards are like upgrades. The octopus uses them to get new cards, new blocks, basically improve their deck as they play.
Okay, so they're getting better as they go. Interesting.
For example, they might get a card that lets them draw more cards on their turn, or maybe a block that acts as a trap for the shark.
Ooh, traps. Okay, now things are getting interesting. What kind of traps are we talking about?
There's one that makes the shark get rid of their currents.
Currents? Those are like...
They're like speed boosts for the shark. They help him zip around the board quickly.
Got it.
Yeah, so losing those is a big deal. There's another trap that sends the sharks back to their den, which basically sets them way back in the game.
Ouch. So the octopus is not defenseless. Let's talk about those eat cards. How does eating work? I'm curious.
Well, it's not as simple as just landing on a food block. The octopus needs to have the right eat card in their hand, and their octopus block needs to be next to the food they want to eat.
Makes sense.
Then they play the card, reveal the food block, put a shell in its place, and then that food goes on a track. But here's where it gets interesting. Each time they eat, they get a bonus, a one-time special ability.
Hold on. So eating isn't just about winning the game. It's about getting these tactical advantages.
You got it. Each of the 4 food blocks has a different effect.
Like what?
Well, the red rock crab, that lets the octopus hold more cards.
More options. Nice.
Exactly. Then there's the Cape Rock lobster, and with that one, they can hide a bunch of blocks all at once.
Talk about disappearing into thin air.
Right. Then there's the sea snail, and that lets them search their deck for a specific card they need.
Handy, almost like digging through your backpack for the exact tool you need, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a mini game of resource management.
They have to really think about what they need at that moment. Now, you mentioned zones before. Can you remind us what those are and how they affect the octopus?
Oh yeah, zones. So the board's divided up into these different zones. Think of them like different areas of the kelp forest. And these zones, well, they affect which cards the octopus can play.
Interesting. So location matters.
Definitely. Some cards can only be used in certain zones, so the octopus has to be aware of that. It adds another layer of strategy to the game.
Wow, so much to consider. It's not just what cards you have, but where you are on the board. This is getting complex.
And we haven't even talked about the shark yet.
All right, let's dive into the shark side of this underwater showdown. They're the predator here, but how do they actually hunt the octopus down?
The shark's goal is pretty straightforward. Strike the octopus and then win a final showdown. But getting there, that takes some planning and, yeah, a little bit of luck.
So are you saying it's a game of chance for the shark?
Well, they rely on dice rolls to move around the board, search for the octopus, and attack.
Okay, so it's a dice-driven game for the shark. What kind of dice are we talking about here?
They have 3 types of dice. Blue currants, those are for movement. Yellow search dice for revealing blocks. and red strike dice for attacking.
All right, so each turn, the shark is rolling these dice and then using them to move around and figure out where the octopus is hiding. Is that right?
Exactly. They've got to be really strategic about how they move and when they use those dice. The currents are super important for traveling quickly.
Speed is key.
It is, but they can also be saved up to buy powerful cards.
Interesting. So there's a trade-off there. They have to decide between the speed now or the potential of those cards later.
Yep, it's a tough choice. But before we get into the cards, let's break down the shark's turn step by step. I'm really curious to see how all these dice work together.
Okay, let's do it. Walk me through it.
So each turn starts with draw and roll. The shark draws 2 dice from their bag and rolls them. That's their dice pool for that turn.
Makes sense.
Then comes placing currents. They could put those blue dice on empty current spaces on the board.
So they're kind of creating their own fast travel routes, like their own little highway system.
Yeah, you could say that. It's a risk, though, because the octopus can see where they're going. Then comes the actual moving.
Right, so the shark has to move each turn. How far can they go?
Normally just 1 space at a time. But if they land on a current, they can use it to skip spaces and move much faster.
Okay, so the currents are like shortcuts, helping them cover ground quickly.
But there's a catch. To use a chain of currents, the numbers on the dice have to go down.
So they can't just hop on any current they want.
Nope. They have to be strategic about how they place those currents, creating pathways that have decreasing numbers. That's how they maximize their speed.
Got it. What happens to the currents after the shark uses them? Do they just stay on the board forever?
No way. After they swim over a current, they remove it, the first one they used, and then they put it on their growth track.
Growth track. And that sounds interesting. What's that all about?
That's where they unlock permanent abilities. They get stronger as they move around the board.
Ooh, I like that. A sense of progression for the shark. But wait, we still have those search and strike dice to talk about. How do they use those effectively?
Right, that's where zones come back into play.
Mhm.
So the shark can use their yellow search dice and red strike dice in the zones that are right next to them.
Okay.
But there's a rule. The value of the die they use has to be the same as or bigger than the zone value.
So some areas are harder to search or attack?
You've got it. Like the deeper they go into the kelp forest, the harder it is to see, the higher the dice roll they need.
Makes sense. So when they search, what happens?
They get to reveal a block in that zone. Could be anything, a shell, a trap, maybe even the octopus itself.
That's got to be a tense moment.
Totally. The shark could find a trap and get set back, or boom, they find the octopus.
And what if they find the octopus with a search die?
Well, it's kind of a tease. They know where the octopus is, but they can't attack yet. They need a strike die to do that.
Yeah, the suspense. Okay, so let's talk strike dice. What happens when the shark finally gets to attack?
If they use a strike die on a zone and find the octopus, it triggers a confrontation.
I'm on the edge of my seat. What happens in a confrontation?
It's intense. Both players secretly choose a confrontation card. They reveal them at the same time. The shark's trying to match the color of the octopus's card.
A color matching game? Okay.
Yeah, and if they match, the shark wins the whole game. But if they fail, the octopus gets away and gets to use a special ability to throw the shark off their trail.
Wow, high stakes. So the shark has to find the octopus and outsmart them in this little card duel. What if they just keep missing?
Well, each time the shark fails, it actually gets easier for them to win the next confrontation.
So they have a chance to redeem themselves.
Yeah,
But there's also that hunger track, right?
exactly. And that's a big limitation.
Right. How does that come into play?
So every time the shark uses a strike die, even if they miss, they get hungrier. And using stored energy to buy cards, that makes them hungry too.
It's like a ticking clock.
It is. If the shark gets to the end of that hunger track, they're basically exhausted. Game over. The octopus wins.
So the shark can't just attack all the time. They have to balance hunting with managing their energy levels. So much strategy.
It's all about balance, for sure.
Yeah.
And that's part of what makes kelp so much fun.
We've covered a lot the octopus's sneaky tricks, the shark's relentless hunt. Before we move on, let's talk about those shark cards for a second. What kind of abilities can they give the shark?
Oh, they can really shake things up. The shark cards can give them extra movement, let them change the value of a die, even let them peek into the dice bag and choose a specific die.
So they get some special powers?
Yeah, like having a few secret weapons.
Yeah.
But they come at a cost, right? They have to spend that energy we talked about.
And that makes them hungrier.
Exactly. Each card has an energy cost, and the shark has to decide. Is the benefit worth getting hungrier?
Playing with fire.
You got it.
Well, this is just the beginning, right? We've just scratched the surface of kelp. We've seen how both sides move, how they attack, but there's so much more to uncover.
Definitely. In part 2, we'll go even deeper. We'll look at different strategies, how those blocks really interact, and how that creates such a dynamic, exciting game.
Can't wait.
Welcome back to our Kelp deep dive. We've talked a lot about the octopus and the shark, their moves, their attacks.
But those blocks, they keep coming up as a key part of this whole game.
Oh, absolutely.
It's more than just markers on the board, right? They add a whole other level of strategy, and it really brings the theme of predator versus prey to life.
Couldn't have said it better myself. They're always shifting the balance of power, creating so much depth to the game.
Let's break it down, starting with the octopus blocks. We know they have food blocks, traps, and obviously the octopus block itself.
Right, and those food blocks, they're not just about staying alive, they're like power-ups. They give the octopus a real edge when they need it.
So it's not just about surviving, it's about getting tactical advantages.
Exactly. Each food block, when the octopus eats it, they get a one-time bonus. It's unique to that food.
Okay, so give me an example.
All right, so the red rock crab, that one lets the octopus hold more cards in their hand.
More options, that's always good.
Right, like expanding their mental capacity, more choices every turn.
So if the octopus is feeling overwhelmed, needs a little more flexibility, the red rock crab comes in clutch.
For sure. Or let's say they need to make a quick escape, disappear for a second. That's when the Cape Rock lobster comes in.
What does that one do?
The Cape Rock lobster lets the octopus hide all their revealed blocks immediately.
Poof, gone.
Vanishing act. And the shark is left totally clueless.
That's got to be infuriating for the shark, especially if they thought they had the octopus trapped.
Tell me about it.
Are there any other food blocks that are good for defense like that?
Not exactly defense, but the sea snail is super strategic. It lets the octopus search their whole deck for a specific card.
So if they're in a bind, they can go digging for that one card that'll save them.
Yep. It's like that moment when you're digging through your backpack for the one thing you absolutely need.
I love that analogy. What about the last food block?
That's the South African abalone, and this one, it's a game changer. It gives the octopus a free learn action.
So they can draw more cards, get more blocks.
Yep. Up to 3 new cards or blocks, it's a huge boost.
I'm seeing a real pattern here. Each food block gives a different advantage. But it sounds like timing is everything.
Oh, absolutely. The octopus has to be thinking ahead, what's coming next, what challenges they might face, and choose their meals accordingly.
But we can't forget those traps. Those are crucial for the octopus, right?
Definitely a key part of their defense. We know they can slow the shark down, mess with their movement, but remind me, what kind of traps does the octopus have?
I'm drawing a blank. Refresh my memory.
Okay, well, one of the best ones makes the shark discard their currents. And remember, those are like speed boosts for the shark.
Right, so losing even one can be a big setback.
Huge setback. Especially if the shark was about to close in on the octopus. Gives the octopus a much-needed breather.
Are there other traps that mess with the shark's movement like that?
Oh yeah, there's one that can send the shark all the way back to their den.
No way.
Yeah. Like, imagine, you're the shark, you finally track the octopus down, and boom, back to square one.
Brutal. So the shark has to be super careful, always watching out for those hidden traps. It's like a constant game of cat and mouse.
Totally. Now, we haven't really talked about the octopus block itself.
Good point. What's special about that one?
The octopus block, it can never be removed from the game.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, no matter how many times the shark searches or attacks, it always stays on the board.
I like that. It really emphasizes that the octopus is always out there, somewhere, lurking in the shadows.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Always a threat. Now, what about the shark's blocks? We know they have those blue current dice, which act like speed boosts and can also be stored as energy. But are there any other blocks they can use?
That's a good question. We've been so focused on the octopus, I almost forgot the shark must have some tricks, too.
Right. Well, it's not a block exactly, but
Yeah.
the shark does have their growth track.
Ah, yes, the growth track. We touched on it before, but let's dig a little deeper. Remind me, what is it?
Think of it as the shark's skill tree. It's a bunch of tiles, and each one represents a permanent ability the shark can get throughout the game.
And how do they unlock these abilities?
Remember how they use currents for movement? Well, after they swim over a current, they can put it on their growth track.
So the more they move, the more powerful they get. That makes sense.
Right. And those abilities, they can be pretty awesome. Some tiles give the shark an extra die roll every turn.
So they have more chances to find and strike the octopus.
Exactly. Others let them re-roll dice if they get a bad roll. And some even give them a burst of energy, so they can buy more cards. Exactly. It's all about planning ahead. You know, the shark needs to decide. Do I want to focus on speed, attack power, resource management?
So many choices. It makes the game feel so dynamic.
Right. The shark isn't just mindlessly hunting, they're evolving too, getting stronger every turn.
I'm really seeing how those blocks for both players make the game so strategic. It's not just about moving pieces around, it's about using these blocks to influence the entire flow of the game.
Couldn't agree more. And speaking of influencing the game, we still haven't really talked about those shark cards.
Oh, right. Those cards. We briefly mentioned them, but let's dive into the details. I'm so curious to see what kind of tricks the shark has up its sleeve.
Get ready to be amazed. The shark cards are like their secret arsenal, ready to disrupt whatever the octopus is planning.
Okay, tell me everything. What kind of abilities can these cards unlock?
Think of them like special maneuvers, giving the shark a burst of speed, maybe extra attack power, or even the ability to mess with the dice themselves.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Give me some specifics.
All right, imagine the shark needs to make a sudden turn to catch the octopus off guard. They've got the agile card for that.
So they can change direction mid-move.
Boom. Sudden agility leaves the octopus wondering where they went.
What a great way to outsmart the octopus, especially if they're hiding behind a bunch of blocks.
Right. And what if the shark wants to counter the octopus's hiding ability?
Is there a card for that?
There is. The Hunter's Instinct card lets the shark peek at a hidden block.
So they get a little clue about the octopus's location.
Yep. Like they've got this sixth sense, can sniff out the octopus no matter where they hide.
The shark gets to play detective. I love it. What other cards can they use to gain an advantage?
Well, if they want to make sure they get a high roll on a strike die, they've got the Daring card.
What does that one do?
It lets them re-roll any die.
So they get a second chance.
Exactly. But there's a catch. It makes them hungrier.
High risk, high reward.
You got it. And then there's Vigilant. This one's interesting.
Okay, tell me more.
It lets the shark save a die from their roll and use it later.
So they can hold on to a good roll.
Exactly. It's like having a little insurance, a secret weapon. They can use at just the right time.
I love these cards. So much strategy involved. But how does the shark know which cards to buy? It can't be random.
Oh no, it's all about strategy. They have to consider everything. The situation, their hunger level, where the octopus is, what the octopus might do
It's
next.
like a game within a game.
Totally. Weighing the benefits of a card against the cost, always thinking about the big picture.
This is amazing. We've got the blocks, we've got the cards, and it all comes together to create this incredibly complex, exciting game.
And that's just the shark side. We still need to talk about how the octopus can use their blocks and cards effectively.
Right. Let's dive into that. All right, welcome back. So we've explored all these pieces, the blocks, the cards, the zones, and the tracks.
It's like we've taken this whole game apart and examined each little piece.
Exactly. But now we need to put it all back together, see how it works in action.
Right. It's time to talk strategy, how each player can use everything we've learned to win.
Okay, let's start with the octopus. Master of stealth, king of evasion. What are some ways they can really get in the shark's head, mess with them?
One word, misdirection. Remember those move cards?
Yeah, the octopus uses them to move their block around.
It's more than that. They can use them to move other blocks too. Create confusion for the shark.
So it's not just hiding, it's about making things unpredictable.
Exactly. Imagine this. The shark's been tracking the octopus using their search dice, thinking they've got them cornered.
They're feeling confident.
Right. And then, bam! The octopus plays sudden evasion, swaps two pairs of blocks.
So the shark is looking in the wrong place.
Totally. What they thought was the octopus is just an empty shell. The real octopus is somewhere else entirely.
The shark must feel so frustrated.
Oh, definitely. It's all about making the shark doubt themselves, wonder if they can trust what they're seeing.
What other cards can the octopus use to pull off those kinds of tricks?
Oh, there's Cloud of Ink. That one lets them swap two blocks and then hide one of them.
So they're moving and disappearing at the same time.
Exactly. Like a magician vanishing in a puff of smoke.
Love it. But what about those learn cards? We know those are for improving their deck, but how do those fit into a bigger strategy?
Learn cards are all about adaptation. The octopus has to adjust to what the shark is doing.
So if the shark's getting good at predicting their moves, the octopus needs to change things up.
Right. They might need more hide cards to disappear more often, or maybe cards that let them move further.
So they're studying the shark, finding weaknesses, and then changing their own deck to exploit those weaknesses.
Exactly. It's like a chess match, but with cards.
And then there are the eat cards. We know each food block gives them a bonus, but how should they decide what to eat and when?
It depends on their overall strategy. Need a quick escape. Cave rock lobster. Looking for a specific card. Sea snail.
It's all about using the right bonus at the right time.
Timing is everything, like having a superpower, but you can only use it once.
All right, let's switch gears and talk about the shark. They've got that hunger track pushing them to be aggressive, but they also have to be careful. What are some strategies they can use to hunt down the octopus?
First things first,
Yeah.
they need to know the board inside and out. Those zones with their different values, that's crucial for the shark,
So they need to focus on the zones where they have the best chance of finding the octopus.
and where they won't waste their dice. Then there's the whole thing with currents. Remember, those aren't just for speed,
Right, they can be saved to buy cards.
but they can also be used to control the board itself.
Control the board. How?
They can use currents to create choke points, funnel the octopus into predictable paths.
Ah, so they're hurting the octopus, making it easier to predict their movements.
Exactly. And then there's the growth track. The shark needs to think about which abilities will help them most.
So they're becoming more powerful, more dangerous throughout the game.
Right. More dice rolls, more re-rolls, more energy to buy cards. It all adds up.
And then there are the shark cards, their special moves. We've already talked about Agile and Hunter's Instinct. Any others that are really powerful?
Vigilant. That's a good one. Lets them save a die to use on a later turn.
It's like having a little surprise up their sleeve.
Exactly. So many possibilities. But with all these options, for both players, how does the game usually play out? Is it balanced, or does one side have a clear advantage?
That's a great question. I'm curious too.
Kelp is a surprisingly balanced game. It really comes down to who can use their abilities better and who can adapt to what their opponent is doing.
So it's not just about luck, it's about skill and strategy.
Absolutely. It's a battle of wits. Every decision matters.
Huh.
And that's what makes it so much fun.
We've explored so much in this deep dive. The mechanics, the strategies, everything. What's your final takeaway? What makes Kelp stand out from all the other board games out there?
For me, it's how well it captures that predator-prey relationship. You feel the tension, the excitement, the need to think ahead.
It's not just about winning, it's about the experience.
Exactly. It's a game that keeps you engaged the whole time. I encourage everyone to check it out. Dive into this underwater world and see what strategies you can come up with.
Who knows? Maybe you'll even find yourself thinking like an octopus or a shark in your everyday life. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Kelp. We'll see you next time for another adventure in the world of games.